Draft Resolution 3 is entitled United Nations African Institute for the Prevention of Crime and the Treatment of Offenders. It corresponds to Third Committee Document L16. Draft Resolution 3 as a whole was adopted by the Third Committee without a vote. May I take it that the Assembly wishes to adopt Draft Resolution 3? It is so decided.
When I left university, I became a probation officer. I don't know if you know what a probation officer does, but he works in court, and some people certain categories of people convicted or found guilty, instead of being sent to prison, they are sent to live in their communities, but are supervised to ensure that they live, well, an industrious life and so on. I started developing interest in crime and also to understand why some people commit crimes. I had the opportunity to work in different parts of Uganda, and I gained the experience. One of the experiences, I became a headmaster of Campilling's approved school. The young people, young offenders who were found guilty of offenses, instead of sending them to prison, they are sent there where they are trained in certain skills to become useful. And when I went to UK, I was fortunate enough to be admitted to an academic program at Cambridge University in criminology. And it had students from many parts of the world. We are not a big class. So when I came back to Uganda, I was lucky to be chosen as part of the Uganda delegation that went to Kyoto on the Congress, UN Congress on crime prevention and treatment of offenders. I made friends and contacts in many parts of the world. At that meeting, I remember when there was a big delegation, Uganda delegation, there was the late Mr. Okware, who was the Commissioner of Prisons. Delegates from Uganda, spearheaded by Okware, and delegates from Nigeria, from Egypt, from Ghana, also talked, why can't an institute, such institute, be set up for Africa? Okware didn't know me before we went. He got to know me and he said, young man, why don't we push this idea forward? So at the next Congress, Crime Prevention in Geneva, the African delegation made a demand that Africa needed a regional institute where governments could collaborate and cooperate in fight against crime.
But it must be collectively and not merely as so many individual states. We must do it together, and we must be entrusted with this responsibility by the United Nations and given their full backing.
And they said, since UN had assisted countries in Asia and Far East, and they also encouraged the Europeans and people in Latin America to set up institute, Africa should also be given an opportunity. Somehow, ECA, the Economic Commission for Africa,
ECA acts as a catalyst for economic and social cooperation by bringing together governments and United Nations organizations in prototype projects.
And then the Organization of African Unity, OAU, were also interested. At that time, there was some center in Egypt, but that center in Egypt, though in Africa, was serving largely the Mediterranean country, especially the Arab countries, in Africa and also in the Middle East. It wasn't really serving sub-Saharan Africa. So resolutions were passed.
Draft Resolution 3 is entitled United Nations African Institute for the Prevention of Crime and the Treatment of Offenders. May I take it that the Assembly wishes to adopt Draft Resolution 3? It is so decided.
Eventually, in 1986, ECA had to appoint experts who would then not only develop a project proposal, but also invite countries to want to host such institute. And then ECA had to choose which of these applicants had the facilities to set up the institute. By then, I think at Makerere, I became associate professor of sociology, and with specialization in criminology.
Juvenile justice.
So I had a sabbatical leave in Zambia, at the University of Zambia. And while I was there, a colleague from Zambia and I were chosen as consultants for that task. Uganda did apply, Morocco applied, Djibouti applied, and Zambia applied. And we had to undertake missions in these countries to appraise what the countries considered or were willing to provide for hosting the the institute. Somehow, the late Honorable Semo Gereri, as a foreign minister, had made an impression on UN on crime prevention and had established contacts. Government did agree that they could forego Nagu, which was then the police training college, and have the institute established here. So when we came here to look at the premises and what the government promised to do, it was far ahead of other competitors. We looked at what Zambia could offer, Djibouti, I don't know the other country, but Uganda's offer was very attractive. And it remains attractive, So in 1989, an inaugural meeting of the governing board, governed by a conference of ministers of African countries. And since this was going to be their institution, they also selected who will be the member countries on the governing board. The government agreed, they signed a hosting agreement, and I was appointed his deputy. So I had been with the institute from when the idea came up. The idea was pursued, was discussed in different forums, and it became a reality.
I've been working with this institute for quite some time now. In this official capacity for about 4 years, but I had worked as a consultant with the institute from 2004. I came here as a practicing advocate. The institute had a case in which we had to relieve some property which was under threat of attachment. So that's how I got to come to know, to interact with UNAFRI, and eventually continued with that case, which continued through the High Court, Court of Appeal, up to the Supreme Court, where UNAFRI was successful. And thereafter, UNAFRI retained me as a legal consultant. But I've been a lawyer in private practice. Before that, I was largely involved in criminal prosecution of matters where I was defense counsel as a private practitioner. And at the same time, I was practicing teaching law at the Lord Vomit Center, where I taught law from around 2005 up to around 2011 there. So I got into UNAFRI with that experience. The officers who were there then, the director was from the DRC, he was called Dr. Masamba. Later he was succeeded by Mr. Kisembo, the former IGP, and actually it's Mr. Kisembo, the late Kisembo, who brought me to UNAFRI at that level, yes. UNAFRI was set up to largely assess the criminality trends in the region, on the continent of Africa, and assess its impact on national development. The other one was to promote technical cooperation, to bring African countries to rally around areas and causes of crime and matters that are peculiar to them as a continent. Yes. Then the other big one was to assist the criminal justice system in formulating policies and programs in the areas of crime prevention and the criminal justice system.
We came to interact because when I was chief registrar, it had just been formed and had been established in Uganda. And we're interested because under its mandate, it has research in the criminal justice area. Because when I became Director of Public Prosecutions, I interacted more. The advantage was that when you have their support, they have connections with many African countries in the criminal justice area. Police, prisons, DPP, and other institutions in Africa are coordinated around the UNAFRI activities.
You see the objectives of the institute is to conduct training of judicial officers, prosecutors, all stakeholders in that line, police, prisons, legal practitioners, civil society, because all these together form what is the criminal justice stakeholder chain, the chain of the stakeholders in that area. Yes. UNAFRI has done a lot of work, right, in this area of crime prevention and criminal justice. A lot of activities, a lot of projects. UNAFRI rallied Africa onto coming up with a convention on extradition and mutual legal assistance. If you come here and look at the literature and the workshops, a lot of work was done, but something small halted the process at the end. This is one big project which did not materialize, but for which, up to today, I still call upon African countries to come and complete that process, because it was almost done. It was at the tail end. It was waiting to go to the African Union for it to be adopted. We are going to form here an African Center for Firearms, and also a lot of work was done. It was being supported by the State Department of the United States. And those two projects never materialized, but it is one big example of how much work UNAFRI can do together if marshaled together. But there are other projects that UNAFRI has done for individual states, member states. For example, in Uganda, right, is a project from Prison Back Home, which was intended to stop the issue of recidivism. This constant reoffending, what we call the revolving door. You know, you go to prison, you come out, you reoffend, you go back.
From Prison Back Home was basically an initiative between UNAFRI and the top management of Uganda Prison Service to recruit and train professional social workers, or these days we call them rehabilitation and reintegration officers. They are prison non-uniformed social workers. Yes, these engage the prisoners, especially convicts, from when they start serving their sentence, what they hope to do and where they will do it, and prepare for another life after release.
We had a lot of discussions on the alternative sentences to imprisonment. They gave us studies that had been carried out by other sister institutions. And we then put up the law under Ministry of Internal Affairs. Ministry of Internal Affairs coordinated this. Prisons came in as DPP's office. We also gave our views. The judiciary came in. And stakeholders put together resources.
And Uganda Prison has been voted as the best prison service in the whole of Africa because of some of these policies it adopted. That project was spearheaded by UNAFRI and together with other partners, GTZ, now GIZ, and ETC. But UNAFRI was the lead in putting this project together. It has done other projects also on community service, reviewing legislations of member state countries. We've done assessments of SDGs, performance of member state countries. I did one in Seychelles personally, where I went to Seychelles, visited Seychelles, and ran through their criminal justice system, looked at their prisons, how they handled reoffending, how they handled rehabilitation, how they handled management of prisoners. I talked to the police, the Commissioner of Police in Seychelles. I talked to the Chairperson of Human Rights Commission, the Ombudsman for anti-corruption. I talked to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and did a country assessment of their performance, and they really scored well as Seychelles and found that many of their systems were working, were transparent, and we wrote a report in which we gave them a copy and sent the other to the Secretary General of the United Nations. So that's how we've been helping member states. We've done drugs. I've done assessment of drug trafficking in the Francophone countries in West Africa and presented their findings in Japan. In touch, it was a project sponsored by JICA, and to train their officers, their judicial officers, police, and prosecutors. Yes. Then, of course, there are challenges in the criminal justice system. Many of the challenges in the criminal justice system remain the same in Africa. Issues of backlog, congestions in prisons caused by lack of enough judicial personnel, the same colonial laws were adopted that have not helped us at all, right? Yes, we've been trying to advocate for alternative dispute resolution mechanisms to help decongest, to help remove the colonial hangover and eliminate those complex legal jargons and complex legal structures which were adopted from our colonial, we used to call them masters. And actually, part of our mandate is to promote African traditional systems that work best for us and to share them amongst African states and tell them that, for example, a country X has done away with all this, yes, and maybe has progressed well. Why don't you copy? Because largely that's why we're here.
There are more things to do, such about the crime rate. Now we have the numbers of staff have increased, the congestion levels. We are grappling with a number of problems that research would be very much welcome to provide data-based information that we can work on. It will be welcome. And also training of staff. It is like it had subsided a bit, but we hope and pray that it is rejuvenated because we always need training in different areas that can help us deliver the service better.
First of all, it's what I should have really started with, appreciating the government of Uganda and the facilities that the Uganda government gave us as a host country. We have 12 units of houses that were given to us as an institute. We have a very big headquarters, which acts as our secretariat. We are given diplomatic status. So Uganda really gave us conditions that would satisfy us, that would comfort us to really work. They pay their member, they're up to date with their member state contributions. They've given us opportunities, they've given us facilities. We don't pay taxes. We're given visas if we want them. So really the conditions are ripe and opportune for us to function. Yes. Moving forward, our focus is still on crime prevention and the criminal justice system. Our biggest responsibility is to get member state countries to get the best practices of their criminal justice systems and share it with their peers. So there are areas that have been identified by the Commission and by the General Assembly as areas, new areas for which we should tackle in terms of dealing with crime, issues of cultural trafficking, issues of cybercrime. Our banks are being hit day and night, yes. But there hasn't been a rallying point, and UNAFRI could act as the platform that can handle this, share best practices, see how other countries have handled it. These institutes are called the United Nations Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice Program Network Institutes. We call them in short the PNIs. There's one in Asia and the Far East. It's called UNAFRI. There's one for South America, called ILANO, the Latin American Institute of Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice. There's one for Europe, based in Finland. To be part of the PNI, you apply to UNODC. It is UNODC, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, that gives you that accreditation to be part of this program network. So, Africa lobbied from 1979 to have this institute. Yes. So UNAFRI is the only institute that deals with crime prevention and criminal justice on the whole continent, and it is hosted in Uganda. And in Uganda, fortunately or unfortunately, it is the only UN institute which is hosted by this country. So really, I call upon stakeholders in Uganda to support this institute, to work with it, to cooperate with it, to be able to project its power and force outside Uganda and onto the other countries in the continent. But UNAFRI cannot be strong outside before it is strong at home. We've got to renewed calls from member states, Malawi, Mozambique, Kenya, member states that continue to regularly pay the assessed contribution. And I want to thank those African member states that continue to heavily support us. Morocco, Nigeria, Uganda, the host, Kenya, Tanzania, all these neighboring countries, Malawi, Seychelles, these countries are all paying their monies. One of the things that we're trying to pay attention for future generations and enticing the young people to pick interest in the work and activities of UNAFRI is that we have entered a number of MOUs with universities, both in Uganda and in other countries, in Nigeria, in Malawi. But specifically, if I can talk about the ones of Uganda, we've entered into an MOU with Makerere University, and we have a very good now working relationship with the Lord Development Center in Kampala. We go and conduct lessons in crime and to sensitize our young people, to tell them that, crime trends are changing. We've given opportunities to young people. I've given opportunities to lawyers here to form a nucleus of my research element to support the Research and Documentation Directorate. As I told you, the host facilities are quite comfortable, yes, and broad and available to us. We have free internet, we have computers, desks, everywhere to sit. All open for young people to come and conduct research here. So the future is bright for the younger generation, and the institute is here for them to take over when we finally depart. Thank you.